I think people understand that the Fed is trapped, that they're caught. And they're caught in a quandary of death by hyperinflation or death by depression. And when you have asset prices where they are right now, and starting to shake. Paul Volcker in 1980 raised the federal funds rate to 19.75%. That's getting serious about inflation. What they're doing is jawboning. And I guess we'll see how much the markets can really take. But I think people are realizing that. And people are buying gold and silver right now, not to get wealthy, but because it is and represents wealth. And in a world of asset prices that are so crazy overvalued, there's nothing on the planet that offers the argument that silver does. Of course, price action doesn't support it, the manipulation surrounding it, but from a standpoint of utility in industry, where solar panels are supposed to double or triple in the next year or two, and the same thing with battery-powered vehicles, and in a digital and green application or world where digital and green applications are expanding, there isn't an asset on the planet that offers what silver does. In the light of everything being blown up, silver is still under half of what it was. So that's why people are buying, because they're afraid. They see inflation, they see the frailty of their investments, and they realize silver is, even though it hasn't expressed itself yet, represents maybe the best value in the investment universe. I don't see anything that offers the value that silver does. My asset portfolio, which is almost entirely gold and silver, because I don't see a safer place to put it. And along the way, it's tough. You have to have strong fingertips. You have to hang on. You have to trust your conviction. And ask yourself, why is it the most concentrated short position in any commodity traded on COMEX? Why do they exert so much effort to hold it down when the fundamentals are so extraordinary? And I think one of the things that make it difficult for silver to express itself is the dollar hegemony, where the dollar rules the roost and the government behind it pulls the strings. But what happens if all of a sudden the dollar loses its singular world reserve status? What happens if Saudi Arabia, who is already in negotiations with China to sell oil for yuan, just like Nigeria is already doing? What happens if we see an accentuation of what's going on with Russia? How about the Belt Road Initiative with China connecting 85% or 80% of human population? And now there's this new route between Iran and India. What we are seeing is a de-dollarization, a move away from the dollar hegemony. And when that snaps, when that happens, things like the ability to manipulate the COMEX price, I think will be a thing of the past. And the only reason all of these nations aren't bitching about it right now is because that is what they've been transitioning into. They have been the ones accumulating gold and silver. They have been the ones quietly de-dollarizing. So they play along the game. If you can't beat them, join them type of thing, until they are able to beat them. And they'll beat them by, I believe, challenging the dollar for singular world reserve status. The Chinese digital yuan has done close to $10 billion in transactions over the last year. With all of these countries coalescing together, Russia, China, India, South Africa, the likelihood, I believe, and these are all the biggest producers of gold and silver in the world, the biggest accumulators of it as well. What I believe will happen at some point is that they will challenge the dollar. They will issue a gold-backed or a commodity-backed BRICS nations currency on the back of the success that the Chinese have already had with their Belt Road Initiative and their digital yuan. When something like that happens, when the dollar loses its hegemony, when the dollar loses its ability through sanctions and edict and governmental decree to control the markets, that's when it snaps overnight. Now, it's not fun waiting for it. In the end, we'll be proven right. And I think there are very few things on the planet that offer the utility, the necessity, and the scarcity that silver does. In a world of blown up asset prices, it's the most undervalued asset on the planet. So being right sometimes means you're wrong until you're right. And I've experienced that a lot. Yeah, we may not have been right yet, but we will be. In 1974, Henry Kissinger struck a deal with the Saudis to value oil in dollars globally through OPEC. And for that, we would protect the Saudi kingdom. The fact that Russia signed a joint military cooperation agreement with Saudi Arabia the day after we left Afghanistan, and the next day did it with Nigeria, signals the beginning of the end of things that we've seen in our lifetime. In our lifetime, we've known nothing but dollar hegemony, dollar strength, and the world reserve currency. I would argue those days are coming to an end. And so that's when things change. When people are looking at alternatives, look at every other asset class out there and forget about what I'm saying about the dollar losing its singular petrodollar status. But what happens if the Fed is true to its word and the house prices start to exponentially decrease and the stocks and bonds start to decrease? Gold is near its high despite the interest rate hike. That's true. Interest rates and gold are inversely correlated. However, it's real interest rates and the price of gold, the inverse relationship between real interest rates and gold. And I'm just going to focus on gold for one moment. Gold is doing what it's supposed to be doing. But remember, there's a 90% correlation between gold and silver throughout all of history. So if gold leads the way, typically silver will catch up and surpass it in performance. It's a depleted asset. It's massively needed in industry. It's hugely accumulated monetarily. And it's just disappearing. But in the end, mathematics, logic, and economics will prevail. And that's the best we can all do, is try to find something that's logical, that meets the test of economics, meets the test of mathematics, meets the test of old school logic. And you can check all three of those boxes. But sometimes logic and outcome in this crazy world have been inversely correlated until they're not. And that till they're not will happen. It's just a matter of when. Some people would say, with all the inflation we have right now and the craziness, why hasn't it happened yet? Well, and that is because this is all about dollar hegemony. We are entering a period of time, the Great Reset, or whatever you want to call it, where the dollar is teetering, where the system that we've built upon a mountain of debt cannot handle a rise in interest rate. And it's either death by hyperinflation or death by depression. Take your pick, one or the other. And in the end, I do believe that you will be proven right. Gold and silver will be the last men standing, as everything else tries to find fair value in a world where price discovery is all but impossible, even in gold and silver right now. We're still a long ways away from snuffing out inflation. And, I'd rather have someone shoot straight with me based upon years of experience in starting with being a Wharton grad all the way up to Wall Street, figuring it all out and talking to me about something logical with mathematics and economics that makes complete and total sense. Yet you look at the world around us of finance and none of it makes sense. And it's all based upon easy money and low interest rates, where the markets were jacked up to irrational levels. And that's what made people feel wealthy. That's what allowed them to offshore all of our manufacturing capabilities, so that people felt wealthy with their 401k in their home, and it didn't matter that we didn't produce anything anymore. But these types of decisions have consequences. And I think at the same time, we've angered the world with our mismanagement of the currency. The rest of the world, 85 to 90% of the world, does not care what the US says we can and cannot do. The steps are being put into place, or the pieces are being put into place to challenge the dollar. And when all of that money gets dumped, if you think inflation is bad now, the Fed is fighting, wait until see what happens when 90% of the world who has to own dollars to buy oil starts to shed dollars in favor of other currencies. And when that happens, not only do you see massive inflation, but you see interest rates go to the moon. There's your Klaus Schwab Great Reset. When the world dumps dollars, when the dollar is no longer the petrodollar, and they all come home, massive, massive, massive hyperinflation, massive rising interest rates, stocks, bonds, real estate, and the dollar all collapse at the same time. Why do you think gold was reclassified Tier 1? Why do you think the central banks keep purchasing it?